Okay. Hi, everybody. So there have been a lot of awesome people before me and with some awesome talks. I don't know, it's going to be a hard act to follow. Big shout out to Habib University and all the people who have organized this. And also a big shout out to Umm Kulthum. And she forgot to mention that I was her advisor. But, the part which says meaningful, right? Her thesis kind of embodies that, right? So she's done a lot of work for me in explaining what meaningful is. Okay, so here's the problem. We're talking about games. It's like, okay, so let's do an audience check. Okay, this is the first thing that I like to do. How many of you play games? Now I'm going to ask specific questions. Wait. I'm going to put you guys in categories. Okay? Board games, how many? Right. Okay, that's most. Okay. PC games and console games. Okay, there's a decent amount. Okay. Mobile games. A lot of people there. Okay, great. Okay, so the issue with designing anything, right, and even talking about it, is that you have to have some experience of it, right? I used to teach courses in filmmaking as well, so that was kind of relatively easier to do because everybody sees movies, right? Everybody has experience of that. So at least they have some domain knowledge. They have the experience of this thing. Now the problem that I get when I try to teach about games or game design is that a lot of people do not play games. So I'm a little, so over the years that I've been teaching game design, I've come across a way to solve that, is that, I get them to play games in class. So half the semester is spent playing games. And then it's more like, it's less theory, but more practice. And then I tell them how to incorporate theory into that. So that makes it more fun. So I've, in a way, gamified the process of game design, right? It took me a few years to get here, but I did get there. Now, the problem with design, okay, no reflection on people over here, but why are there so many bad designers out there? So many, right? And so I'll take this concept that I first came across in the Big Bang Theory. It's called the Dunning-Kruger effect. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, right? The Dunning-Kruger effect basically says that people think they have a lot of knowledge in a certain field, whereas they don't. They think they're experts in that field, so the field is this big, and they know this much, but they are under the delusion that this much that they know is all that it takes to be an expert in that field. And if you really meet a true expert, they'll never say that I know everything. There's always something else to be learned. There's always something new. There's always, you have to keep going further and further. And also, you might see I have a lot of cat references in my presentation. Well, not as many as I'd like, but I'm starting off with that. So having cats around has also given me a different perspective on things. I kind of got fed up with working with people and their biases and everything. And it sort of made me realize that whatever I'm doing is sort of in the context which is being forced upon me by the people that I'm surrounded with, right? How do you break out of that? So in order to be a good designer, and I keep telling people this, that you have to question everything. Everything, literally. Question everything, of course, take a reality check after that. But there's one kind of sentence saying that my mother always used to tell me, God bless her. She said, try to reach for the moon, right? And if you try to reach for the moon, you'll at least reach the treetop, right? So, I mean, just go beyond what you want to do. Try that much. So that is what I feel that people are not doing anymore. They're too complacent. They're too satisfied with what they have already. So I got a lot of ideas listening to people talk, right? And especially a little bit, I'm just going to sort of speak for a few minutes about this, and then I'll go jump into my presentation. Hopefully my presentation is short. There's a lot of things. I tend to ramble. I try to, because we are talking about holistic design and holistic thinking, and I'm a big fan of that, right? Comes from reading Douglas Adams. Big fan of holistic narrative. You guys should read it. Nobody's read it, I see. So a lot of inspiration comes from Douglas Adams. So about education, right? I was really, I liked what Anzar said, that he found this student playing, what was that game? Temple Run, right? So I have a problem with education, right? Initially when I started teaching, I had a problem with students, right? And then I was like, I had a problem with myself. I said, I'm not good enough. I mean, there's something that I'm doing wrong because the students are not responding. They're being like, blah. And like the people in that, like Anzar pointed out, that black zone, in the shadow zone in that class, they're never, ever really there. So I spent many years cross-questioning myself, thinking, researching, looking into things. And then I finally decided, it's the system. And it's when I truly started going into game design, right, that it became evident. So one shoe does not fit all, right? The same movie that you go to watch, if you watch it in a group, will have different effects on different people. Right? And that, I feel, is a major problem with education today. Right? You cannot fit, as they say, a square peg in a round hole. You can't force people to learn something they can't. I've had a very interesting journey. I have the education. By education, I'm a computer scientist, right? But I never really practiced that. I have written plays. I've acted in plays. I've done theater. I've done sitcoms. I've done a lot of things. So I've done 3D animation, 3D and coding, game development, sketching, painting. I've run through the whole gamut. It's been a very interesting life. The first game that I designed was when I was 15 years old. So that's saying something. Back then, the idea of UX, UI did not exist. Even game design was not a word back then. And unlike some people, I mean, I know I'm a little advanced in age, but I do not identify with my age. I am a child, much to the frustration of my wife. I don't do things unless I'm scolded or unless I want to really do them. Okay, so I mean, that's my basic grief with education, and I think that can be improved. I think the structures that we're following are really outdated, outmoded, and they need to be changed, right? They need to be tailored to, and this is what, like, game design tells you. This is what films tell you. I mean, if you write for films, you have to write for an audience, right? Not everybody's going to like your film. People have this strange notion that if they make a film, it's going to be automatically a hit, and everybody in the world will like it. Yes, there are ways to get more with generic content, which everybody will watch, but then that won't really affect them that much, right? So I like to tell my students that game design is all about UX, right? User experience. So don't look at it. Don't even call it game design. Just call it user experience design, right? And because a lot of people are sort of not very familiar with games. Okay, everybody's played Ludo. Everybody knows about chess. But there are games which are much more complex in their mechanics, right? So not everybody is aware of that. So I take a lot of analogies with films and stuff. But in effect, game design is experience design, pure and simple. And what is experience? What is human experience? We come down to that. Let's start from the essence of that. What is the essence of human experience? The essence of human experience is a narrative, right? It's a story. It's a story that either you want to be a part of or you think you are playing through. And what happens in a story? You feel good. You feel good or you feel bad, but it's basically an emotional journey. It's a highly emotional journey. So experience design is all about evoking emotion for me. That's what experience is. It's all about emotions. It's all about feelings, right? Okay, so let me go further. So just to clarify what is a meaningful and positive impact. So I have a lot of issues when people try to think of games. People have this a little bit of bias against games, right? And to those people, I say, if you haven't played a game, right? If you have not played a game, then there is still a game out there. You haven't played the right game. There is a game out there which is specifically for you, right? You just have to find it. And when I teach game design, the biggest problem that I face is the concept of having a meaningful design. And this doesn't just stand for game design, it stands for all kinds of design, right? And that's why I said that there are a lot of bad designers, because they don't understand how to incorporate the human journey and meaning of that journey into their design, which is tricky. It's difficult. It's not easy. Unfortunately, game design is also a field which is kind of new. There are no academic papers on it. There are no academic theories. If I were to define a game, I could give you 15 different theories by 15 different experts in philosophy, science, design, and they would all work, but there are different ways of saying what a game is. So in essence, my talk will be about creating experiences that resonate with players, right? On a personal level, as well as on a social level. So these are two basic blocks of meanings that humans create for themselves, right? So, meaningful play. Let's start with play. What is play? You've seen babies playing with objects. They're just throwing things around. You've seen cats and dogs. They run around and they play, right? But is that meaningful? Does it have any meaning in the more philosophical sense of the word? Well, yes. Everything is subjective. That is true. But that's why I started off with the experience being the journey, the story, and emotions, right? So while play Play has no structure. It is meaningful in the sense that it's just for experiencing. So babies and little children, they're like little scientists. They're trying to figure out the world by playing through it. They jump in a puddle and they say, oh, I got wet. Okay, that makes sense. Now, next time around, I'll be careful, right? So play does serve a purpose, but it's not inherently meaningful, right? In order to give meaningful play a definition, you define it as a game. Now, what is a game? Okay, difficult to define, but let's just say, for the sake of argument, and this is the common understanding around the world, that games have a few things. They have a goal, right? And they have a feedback mechanism and a reward mechanism. So let's just go with these three things, right? A goal, it needs to have a goal, otherwise it's just play. So games have a goal, they have a structure which gives you feedback, and they have a reward system, right? And we are familiar with the kind of reward systems because we watch a lot of movies, and that's the difference between a good movie and a bad movie. A good movie, sort of, you get involved with it. You are going through the challenges that the protagonist is going through, and you get rewarded when the protagonist gets rewarded, so you feel good about yourself. You are taking that journey with this thing, with the protagonist. And games can offer you much more, right? So, one of the things that I'm doing at work is we're trying to create what is called serious games, right? Which seems to be like an oxymoron. How can games be serious? But it's basically games in which people learn things while playing games, while enjoying themselves, right? So that's a world where work and play are not distinct, right? That's an ideal world. And why can't it exist? That's my challenge to everybody. It can. So, in order for people to be motivated to play, that's where the design part comes in, right? How do you design a game that is engaging? You have to cater to player psychology, to human psychology. So there's this theory, now I'll put in a little bit of academics here, self-determination theory, right? Which says a major criteria for motivation of people is autonomy, competence, and relatedness, right? And in games, a bad game is something in which you do not give the player enough autonomy, right? A player has to have, when you're playing a game, you have to feel that you are making a change in the game, in the world, in the game world, because that is the direct consequence. So when somebody plays a game, it's a step that he or she takes voluntarily. It's what is called stepping into the magic circle. So you do it of your own volition, right? Again, another sort of like differentiation from things that we are forced to do, right? We don't voluntarily do them, we do it with hesitation. In order to play a game, the player has to volunteer to step into the magic circle. And when the player steps into the magic circle, the world around disappears. It's only the world within that circle. And that world is defined by certain rules. That's another point of games, how games differ from play. They have a structure, which are rules, right? And so a lot of times, people in the real world get frustrated, get angry. And it's all because we are all running with certain fears, uncertainties, doubts, unpredictability of the future, right? And games, okay, games help really solve that. Okay, I've just been given a 5-minute warning, and when I found out that I had 20 minutes to do this talk, I went like, you gotta be kidding me. The last lecture workshop I did, I prepared 54 slides, and 1.5 hours later, I was still on slide 1. Okay, so just quickly going through this. Games can put a person in a state of flow. Now, this is an amazing feeling if you've ever had that. I'm sure that many of you have had that without even realizing you've had this feeling of flow. It's the feeling when you're so totally immersed in something that you're doing that the rest of the world just fades away, and it's only that one thing that you're immersed in that exists. Now imagine that kind of mindset. I mean, it's like your mind is on hyperdrive. If you could do that while you're learning things, upskilling yourself. And games give you that safe environment in which to do it. So I have this example of a very, I don't know if that example is true or not. So there's this guy who's an iron worker. He works at a construction site, and he's working with his tools, creating girders and stuff and fixing them. And at night, he goes to his computer and plays this role-playing game in which he's a blacksmith. And he puts in more hours playing that game than he does in his job, even though that's similar. So why does he do that? It's because in that game, he can level up. He knows if he puts in X amount of time, he can level up and he can become better and he can solve more problems, and his life within that magic circle is so much better. One really important point is, again, I feel that a lot of people, they don't learn things properly because they're always afraid. In the classroom, you always have someone who's afraid to speak up because what will other people think, right? Or they're afraid to do something because, oh, what if I break it or something? Games give you that margin. So we're developing sort of serious games in which are simulations of real life, in which people can test their knowledge by operating equipment and doing processes without fear of failure or without fear of breaking anything. Okay, I guess I'll just have to... for the last point that I want to mention, skipping all the rest, this is about narrative and storytelling. I'm really big on narrative and storytelling, and I feel that anything, any design, whether it's even functional design or anything, if behind it doesn't have a narrative, it's not going to be a good user experience. You have to design a narrative. And I'm just going to give you a very quick example. It may be a very lame example, but that depends, but just, bear with me. So I'm going to give you a simple scenario and see how it relates to a game you already know. So I tell people that, okay, imagine there's this new town opening up, like the new Barrier town, and it doesn't have any power yet, right? So there are two power companies. One is solar and one is wind, right? And they want to provide power to this new Barrier town. And the only thing is that there's a tussle between them, and they have plots, right? So they have to have 3 buildings adjacent to each other, right? In order to provide enough power to Barrier town. Now I could go on, but I've just been given the 1-minute warning. So can you imagine what this premise leads up to? What game is it indicating? 3 buildings adjacent to each other, right? So they're competing What could this be a narrative for? Somebody said the right answer, I think. No, it's not Tetris. It's simpler than Tetris. It's tic-tac-toe. Yeah. I could have elaborated a little more. So, okay. This is basically a taxonomy, player taxonomy. Sorry, I'm just going to wrap up in a minute. Just wanted to show that. So we're categorizing players, and it's a very important categorization because, and it's this kind of like a fun categorization as well. Next time you play a game, think about which one of these are you. Are you a killer? Are you an achiever? Are you a socializer? Or are you an explorer? And I didn't get to go through this, so. Thank you.